violenza, la violenza, la violenza, la rivolta. Chi è esitato questa volta lotterà con noi domani. La violenza, la violenza, la violenza, la rivolta. Chi è esitato questa volta lotterà con noi domani. La violenza, la violenza, la violenza, la rivolta. Chi è esitato questa volta lotterà con noi domani. La violenza, la violenza, la violenza, la rivolta. Chi è esitato questa volta lotterà con noi domani. La violenza, la violenza.
Literary history tells us that bookstores at their best are much more than places to buy books. The classic example is Sylvia Beach's Shakespeare and Company and its role in 1920s Paris. The latest entry in the list is Albertine Bookstore and Reading Room, located at the French Cultural Services on Museum Mile in New York City. To launch the site as a destination of intellectual adventure, Greil Marcus, the noted author, journalist, and cultural critic, curated a 5-day festival of provocative public conversations.
We're in Albertine, which is a bookstore in the French Embassy in New York City. It's a Sanford White building, built in 1907. And the idea of putting a 2-story, finished, beautiful, wood-paneled bookstore in this landmark building was an audacious idea to begin with. It is now the only French bookstore in New York City, carrying books in French, carrying books in English translated into French, carrying books in French translated into English, everything imaginable, including a rare book room with the complete works of Bossuet and books by Victor Hugo and everything you could think of. And it was always meant as a place where people would come and wander around and pull books off the shelves and maybe put them back and sit and read. We're here because there's also Festival Albertine to celebrate the opening of the bookstore. And it's a week-long festival bringing together people from the United States and France in all different forms of inquiry and endeavor, whether it's film, whether it's history, economics, literature, fashion, comic books, even mathematics. When Antonin Baudry asked me to curate a festival to mark the opening of the bookstore, the first person I thought of was Olivier Assayas, and I said, if we can get Olivier to say yes, we'll be on our way. That will be the platform for the whole festival.
There is, a lot of young youth, kids, fight for ideals that ultimately are very similar to what the 1970s were about. But for some reason, I think their politics are incredibly simplistic, and I think in a certain way they have a lot of great ideas and generosity and all, but they don't have the strategy, they don't have a reflection, and they are completely cut off from the dialectics of what the workers' movement has been about. And I think that as much as I'm making fun of the language, of the jargon, lingo of the 70s, still there was some, that's what I was trying to explain earlier, there was something that connected the political involvement of kids of my generation with the past, with what had happened before. I mean, it was today. There are like vague ideals of generosity, fighting for democracy, fighting for anti-capitalism, whatever. It's more complex than that. It's more complex than that. I mean, in the sense that if you want to get involved in politics, you have to grasp the complexity, the contradictions, the conflicts of the world you live in. And I think that the world that today the younger generations have to face is infinitely more brutal. It's more dangerous. It's much stronger, much more powerful than whatever we had to deal with in the 1970s. I think there has been an evolution of control in society that is incredibly incredibly scary, and the ways also of modern capitalism have become much more brutal than what in retrospect from the 1970s seems almost gentle. So yeah, I mean, you know, I don't think you make movies to send messages. I don't think you make movies to give answers. I don't think you make movies for big ideas. You do your best. You try to represent the world as you see it, hoping that eventually that perspective you have will open possibilities for your viewers if they have patience enough, you know, to be that generous with your work.
The idea of the festival, in terms of who we would bring together, was always to find people in France and people in the United States who'd have things to say to each other about their work. A conversation always of equals. Last night, for example, we had Matthew Weiner, the creator of Mad Men, with Alexandra Clare, the creator of Engrenage or Spiral. Two of the most serious, two of the most adventurous and imaginative television series of the last 20 years. One in France, seen here, one in America, seen there. Bringing these two show creators, these two showrunners together was an opportunity we couldn't even think about passing up, and that they both said yes, and they were both here, and they had a warm and congenial and contentious conversation last night where a lot of issues got laid bare. We wanted Marjane Satrapi for her comic work, for her film work, for just the enormous stamp she has put on France and really around the world with her work over the last 10 years.
Basically, I come from painting, and then I didn't want and I come also from a very leftist family, so I could not imagine that my first work of art would be in a gallery, somewhere in Paris with people, with a glass of champagne and ha ha ha. I wanted to make popular art, and therefore that's why I started making comics with this conviction that actually you can make an art which is popular and of quality. And then I made cinema, which is also a popular art. And once I did it, I wanted to make some painting. So here, I was like this successful cartoonist, and I was this Oscar nominee woman, extremely full of myself the moment I decided to do that. So, I was like, I'm me, and I'm a painter, so I will start making this painting. And I start painting, and I make like 50, 60 of them, extremely proud of myself. Because, I had the feeling that I really did it. Okay, I go, I make another film, I come back, I look at these paintings. They look like shit. Really, they're bad. They're really bad. The only thing that can make them look good is my own arrogance. Nothing but that, And so, I destroyed all of them, and everybody was like, why do you destroy them? Why do you destroy them? I was like, because this is crap. I know this is crap, And do I want to die? And people, they look at that, and they will say, if I think about, what people they will think about me after my death, she made this crap. No, it has to be destroyed. Nobody has to see that. And once I did that, finally I could make paintings that, at least it gave me the satisfaction that I was making an honest and professional work, not being full of myself. So in a way, I understand very well somebody who destroys whatever he has done. And actually, you talked about that. Maybe before my death, I will do the same thing.
We never went into it with any expectation of what anybody would say. We asked people who would surprise us.
In 1959, Jean Luc Godard shook up the movie world with his revolutionary and still influential new wave film, Breathless. In 2014, 55 years later, at the Cannes Film Festival, he was still making waves, this time winning the jury prize for a film using 3D, Goodbye to Language. One notable critic asserts that it creates nothing less than an ecstasy of the image. Like much of Godard, the story is simple, but the film is mysterious. Canapé chats with the lead actor Heloise Godet about what it means to be in a Godard film.
Je voyais partout des chiens. Cette matinée est un rêve. Chacun doit penser que le rêveur, c'est l'autre.
There's a man, there's a woman, there's a dog, and that's it. And you're gonna be a little bit naked, is it all right? That's all he said, actually. And that was all right because I said I would trust him wherever he wanted to, whatever he wanted to do. I saw the script and I thought it was already brilliant, a beautiful piece of art. And it turned out to be what I expected, except about the sound. And the editing that surprises you a lot when you see the movie. And the 3D also surprises you a lot. But otherwise, everything was already in the script. I was just in underwears, rehearsing, and then taking things away. But the crew was so small, we were just 5. Everybody, just men with me. Everybody was just so respectful, and Godard especially was even more shy than me. I mean, I wasn't doing a show, I was really concentrated, but I felt like he wanted me to be comfortable, and as soon as we were done, like, cover yourself. Really respectful, such a gentleman, such a, I mean, like my grandfather, I would say. I loved him very much for that. Non, en fait, j'ai pas ressenti de dictature sur le plateau. C'est comme ça que je peux effectivement raconter l'histoire. C'est que il y a une hiérarchie, certes. Godard est quelqu'un de respecté en tant qu'être humain, mais non pas en tant que mythe. C'est-à-dire qu'il déteste lui-même qu'on le prenne comme un mythe, qu'on l'aborde comme un mythe. Donc c'est juste un réalisateur qui fait son film avec ses idées très précises. Tout le monde, la toute petite équipe est extrêmement attentive au moindre détail. Mais c'est pas du tout un terroriste. Sur le plateau, c'est respectueux, extrêmement concentré, mais même s'il y a une marge de manœuvre assez restreinte pour les acteurs, certes. Il était très mot à mot, millimétré. Tu vas descendre 3 marches, ensuite tu diras cette phrase, ensuite tu bouscules la chaise en passant, tu fais 3 pas en plus, tu te retournes, tu le regardes. Ensuite, tu regardes la fleur fanée qui est dans le même état que toi. C'est des directions qui étaient à la seconde près, où, par exemple, il y a une scène où il y a la télé derrière nous avec une scène magnifique d'un film de Mamoulian, je crois. Il y en a une où il y a un film de Mamoulian derrière nous, et un autre, un film de Henry King. Et la musique, à chaque fois, du film derrière nous aussi était très porteuse, déjà pour nous en tant qu'acteurs. Mais aussi, elle n'était pas du tout anodine. Il savait exactement quelle phrase allait aller entre telle phrasé musicale derrière nous. Il mettait la vidéo à la seconde près quand on allait entrer dans le chant pour qu'on puisse dire telle phrase après telle note. Enfin, c'était extrêmement millimétré. Après, il y a d'autres anecdotes qui sont moins poétiques, plus physiques. Par exemple, la première et la dernière scène qu'on a tournée ensemble, où il a pris la place du comédien pour montrer comment il devait jouer. Et c'était des interactions physiques où mon mari, qui est une espèce de stéréotype de l'Allemand avec sa moustache là, qui arrive en tirant des coups de feu, qui devait me tirer par les cheveux. Le jour de la répétition, il n'était pas là. Donc c'est Godard lui-même qui arrive et qui me tire par les cheveux. Le premier jour, je ne le connaissais pas plus que ça. Enfin, je veux dire, il n'y a pas besoin de connaître quelqu'un pour tirer par les cheveux, mais c'était assez surprenant, cette interaction. Viens par là. Ah oui, d'accord, ok. Il ne m'a pas du tout fait mal, mais c'était juste surprenant, et il s'est tourné vers moi immédiatement en disant « Je vous ai pas fait mal ». Ah non, non, pas du tout. Bon, bah allez prendre un café maintenant, je vous rejoins plus tard. Et la dernière scène qu'on a tournée, c'était... il voulait que mon mari me pousse contre le mur violemment, et c'était jamais assez violent, donc il a dit « Voilà comment il faut faire, paf !» Pareil, j'ai absolument pas eu mal, c'était juste surprenant et extrêmement drôle en fait, au final. Parce qu'il se retourne, je regarde mon partenaire Kamal Abdelli en disant « C'est bon, t'as compris comment il fallait que tu fasses maintenant ?» Et bon, je sais pas par quelle alchimie, après on a réussi à faire enfin ce qu'il voulait, mais je crois que d'ailleurs c'est pas gardé dans le film, donc il a peut-être pas dû me pousser assez fort au coup de Godard au final. Ce film en particulier est très intime, je trouve. Déjà, c'est tourné chez lui, c'est son chien, c'est ses vêtements parfois qu'on porte, son propre... Enfin, c'est très intime comme film, mais c'est participatif, c'est universel en tout cas, ce qui raconte l'histoire de l'échec amoureux à travers le regard d'un chien. Bon, bah, on peut s'imaginer un peu les histoires qu'on veut, mais pour moi c'est participatif dans le sens où il nous provoque en permanence. Il ne nous laisse pas dans une position de confort, assis sur le fauteuil de cinéma, voir un schéma narratif classique. Il n'y a pas du tout de narration, enfin tellement peu.
Et le début d'une narration, elle est coupée.
Et voilà, il fonctionne que sur la frustration du spectateur, donc c'est un peu inconfortable. Le spectateur se sent bousculé, donc c'est pour ça aussi que certaines personnes trouvent ça très agressif comme film. Mais aussi, parfois, il bouscule sur un mode de l'humour avec des effets de surprise qui, justement, sont très agréables, moi, je trouve. C'est compliqué d'essayer de vouloir placer Godard politiquement parce que lui-même pose des pièges un peu partout. C'est un provocateur, hein, avant tout. Donc il ne sera jamais là où on l'attend et il ne prendra jamais vraiment parti là où on l'attend. Donc je sais, oui, fondamentalement, il peut être de gauche et défendre des idées très profondément de gauche. Mais il ne faut pas forcément essayer de lui coller une étiquette parce que sinon il essaiera de faire le contraire, délibérément. C'est vraiment tellement provocateur.
Je ne dirai presque rien. Je cherche la pauvreté dans le langage. 2.
La violenza, la violenza, la violenza, la rivolta. Chi ha esitato questa volta lotterà con noi domani.
Winner of 2 prizes at the Cannes Film Festival, Master African filmmaker Abderrahmane Sissako's Timbuktu is an urgent piece of socially conscious art, and in the words of the trade paper Variety, confirms the director's status as one of the true humanists of recent cinema. As one critic summarizes it, set in the early days of the jihadist takeover of northern Mali in 2012, the film is a stunningly shot condemnation of intolerance and its annihilation of diversity. Canapé talks with the director about the urgency of making moving images in a world of violent repression.
Je pense que l'idée du film a été là dès la prise de Tombouctou par les djihadistes. Parce que lorsqu'on a connu cette ville, Tombouctou, c'est une ville extraordinaire, une ville d'échange, une ville multiculturelle, vraiment une ville de la diversité. Et quand ça, tout d'un coup, s'arrête, parce que tout simplement, il faut dire les choses comme elles sont, il y a des gens qui sont venus d'ailleurs, parfois ne parlent même pas la langue locale, ils sont parfois nigérians, ils viennent du nord, algériens, etc. Enfin, un mélange, une sorte de succursale qui s'est composée de gens, des gens qui venaient de Pakistan, donc des Afghans, il y avait tout ça. Et donc, quand une ville est ouverte et prise comme ça, de façon violente, et avec une philosophie, avec une vision de l'islam qui n'est pas l'islam, avec une violence, et qu'on est cinéaste, et qu'on sait ça, et je pense que l'envie de raconter ça, elle s'installe. Quand il y a une histoire comme ça qui se passe, c'est l'humanité qui est atteinte. quand un couple meurt parce que lapidé par des gens, qu'ils viennent du nord du Mali, qu'ils viennent d'ailleurs, c'était un choc. Quand un homme va être exécuté en 48 heures parce qu'il y a eu ça, et que cela passe presque inaperçu, une famille détruite, et qui sont pris dans le piège et de l'amalgame de le Touareg, le djihadiste, le terroriste, etc. Et donc quand on est cinéaste, artiste, on a envie d'alerter en quelque sorte les gens pour dire que faisons attention parce que tout ça n'est pas si loin.
Much of what the world knows about surveillance by the USA of its own citizens and many others comes from the leaks of Edward Snowden. The remarkable new documentary Citizen 4, directed by the investigative journalist Laura Poitras, chronicles on site the key days in which Snowden made his revelations from a hotel room in Hong Kong. The camera is there to capture the sense of intimate debate about the tangle of ethics, law, and national security. CANAPE talks about the issues with editor and producer Mathilde Bonnefoy.
Laura reached out to me per email. She was introduced by a producer, a friend of ours, to me, and in her email she described the film she was working on, which was about surveillance, but it was long before Snowden had contacted her. And I must admit I didn't know who she was, but there was something in the tone of her email that was very, very compelling. There was something extremely likable, very limpid, simply very, very likable. And instead of, having this immediate tendency that I have to reject because I was working on other projects and didn't have much time, I was somehow compelled to answer and get more involved. At the beginning, she was explaining that this was the third part of a trilogy she's been working on for many years, of which the two first parts were a film that had been shot in Iraq. It was My Country, My Country. The second film she had shot in that trilogy was The Oath, which was shot in Yemen. And she had intended to focus her interest about the US post-11 to the USA as a place of where these things are happening, these new laws that were enacted in the wake of 9/11. We had started working together specifically on the film in November 2012, but it was more, I had started in a more of a supervising position. And in March of 2013, I moved back to Berlin to really edit with her, and we started editing there. And that's when she told me that she was receiving these anonymous emails.
Laura, at this stage, I can offer nothing more than my word. I am a senior government employee in the intelligence community. I hope you understand that contacting you is extremely high risk.
The first part of the film is much more associative, and it delves upon the lead up to Snowden's revelations, meaning the societal context of these revelations, which means that we see, for example, NSA whistleblower Bill Binney addressing people at a conference, telling about his very negative experience as a whistleblower. We also see General Keith Alexander lying to Congress. We see Clapper lying to a committee. We see the data center, NSA data center in Bluffdale, Utah, being constructed. All these things that were more or less happening in the same period of time, that were, on the one hand, a progression of the surveillance being put in place, and at the same time denials, and at the same time again people fighting those denials. For us, the US government is a protagonist in the film. It's a difficult protagonist to put to grasp it, because it's a multi-headed creature. But we very much felt that the government was one of our protagonists, and we needed to carry on that presence from the beginning till the end of the film, being it through the presence of officials commenting, but also through the surveillance itself, which comes from the US government, and that makes their presence felt all throughout the film.
For now, know that every border you cross, every purchase you make, every call you dial, every cell phone tower you pass, friend you keep, site you visit, and subject line you type is in the hands of a system whose reach is unlimited, but whose safeguards are not.
The days are different, very different. Some of the days are full of conversation, others are very quiet. And so this does reflect how it indeed happened, but of course we also made a lot of choices as to underline some aspects and forget about some others. It's difficult to say what drove the decisions of how to do that, because it's a lot of it is instinctive. I would say it's the core of the creative work to be doing these things, and so it's a bit like if you ask a musician how you come to develop a melody. It's a conjunction of reaction to the footage, and also of a vision that develops as you're working. A feeling of what has to be next, but yeah, we did draw inspiration from the reality of the encounter.
In the end, if you publish the source material, I will likely be immediately implicated. I ask only that you ensure this information makes it home to the American public. Thank you, and be careful. Citizen 4.
Expression allows for things and signifiers and words to be given back their full meaning. And in that regard, I certainly do feel that the work we're doing is very close to this, because we are, for example, with this film, expressing what courage is, and it's interesting because you drive down the street and you look out let's say the taxi window, and you'll see advertisement for sneakers saying "take risks," and you can buy the sneakers that advertise for that. And suddenly you understand, of course, the word risk can have many different uses, and it can be extremely devaluated. For example, through that kind of language that is ubiquitous. And so in art, in poetry, and certainly also in the work we're trying to do there, and also in that what Snowden himself did, was a reclaiming of signifiers to express something that is truthful. And that is the work.
So I don't know anything about you.
Okay, I work for...
Sorry, I don't know your name.
Oh, sorry. My name is Edward Snowden. I go by Ed. Edward Joseph Snowden's the full name.
That which the portrait photographer does in the best possible case is what we also hope to have done, which is to create with all these pieces of footage something that was the essence of the encounter in Hong Kong, and also the essence of the personality of Snowden.
La violenza, la violenza, la violenza, la rivolta, chi è esitato questa volta lotterà con noi domani. La violenza, la violenza, la violenza, la rivolta, chi è esitato questa volta lotterà con noi domani. La violenza, la violenza, la violenza, la rivolta, chi è esitato questa volta lotterà con noi domani.